from the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China. Jaya, thank you for speaking to me today. What do you make of this warning? It's a very stark warning from MI5. We know the background, or people may remember some of the background of the spying case which collapsed, but clearly the threat continues. I mean, I know the Chinese embassy said it's all a load of nonsense, but, you know, Osmani Rice-Davis would have said they would say that, wouldn't they?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. And just to begin with, this is a stark warning. However, it is not a new warning. This is a well-worn, documented Ministry of State Security strategy. And this is a low-cost, high-impact strategy. Thousands of approaches can be made through a social media platform like LinkedIn, and you only need one of those to work and one of those connections to be made for it to have made the operations worthwhile. In terms of the precedent of this, and in terms of it not being new, we had a case in 2018 from the US. This was reported by Reuters, and also a case in the UK in 2023 reported by The Times. Essentially, LinkedIn makes this very easy. You can use free accounts. You don't need to have premium paid accounts. And if you do have a premium account, you can use it at a comparatively low rate. And in terms of the structure in which how LinkedIn operates, it's the perfect platform to perform such espionage sort of strategies and to implement them on people, and for a range of reasons. You know, ultimately, the culture of LinkedIn in and of itself, it's a platform where people routinely accept connection requests from individuals you don't really know personally, but who appear to be legitimate, work in similar sectors. You share mutual contacts with them. They look credible professionally. But then there is also the ego dynamic, which is you might be flattered if you have somebody approaching you, offering jobs, offering meetings, offering, you know, all expenses paid trips to China. And in addition to this, you are able to cultivate the kind of low friction environment in which hostile state actors can blend in and build relationships. And that's what this is all about.
Tell me about what Dan Jarvis was saying there about the relatively low level of information, because some of the information that came out when we read detail about the spying case and speculation about cabinet reshuffles and things like that doesn't seem to be really that premium. But of course, the strategy from China, as you will know far better than I will, seems to be a kind of total strategy that actually any information could be of some use. And of course, if you cultivate someone now at a low level, if they've got an entry-level job, maybe as a parliamentary researcher, goodness knows where their career will go. They're in this for the long term, aren't they?
Absolutely. And I think that we have this perception that when we're talking about the types of information that, you know, spies of hostile state actors may accumulate, we have this image of, you know, this James Bond sort of cinematic approach to this type of information. You know, really, any information can be crucial in building a picture, in building up patterns, pattern of life information, who these individuals interact with, who likes their posts on LinkedIn, for example, on a superficial level, who they seem to have a friendship with, and then tracking movements, seeing what events they're at, seeing who, you know, the crowds within which they are associated. All of that information we may think is harmless because we are putting it out in the public domain. But these are the types of profiles that are built by Chinese state actors when they are trying to create an image of, okay, there is this individual in the center who we're looking at, but what can I find out from all of this information around them? And because we often perceive that as harmless, we tend to be a little bit more careless with it, and we tend to think it's not as high level, again, as this image that we have in our minds. And so that would be the type of information that the Security Minister was referring to. And actually, there's another point that the Security Minister made in terms of those who are most likely to be targeted. I would actually extend that group, and just for those who are listening today, and for everybody who wants to be more conscious of this. Essentially, yes, if you're in the Westminster bubble, if you work with parliamentarians, you absolutely will be a primary target. However, there are many individuals who don't work in government, but work in sectors such as technology, critical or sovereign infrastructure sectors, academia, where intelligence from such sectors, because they are strategic, may be advantageous to the Chinese state as well. So when we're looking at harmless information, or what we perceive as harmless, it's important to know that that threshold is in fact very low. And how I treat it, and how those I work with treat it, which may be helpful to your viewers, is any information that we put out can be put together to build a platform where, you know, these profiles are then created about us, about people that we know, and those are how those associations are formed. So that's what we mean by sort of low-level information, when in fact that can be quite critical.
How much can the government really do about this? Is this just the way it's going to be? Is it going to get worse with AI, with lots of other ways that people can be hacked or profiles can be built up? I just wonder if you have a nation that is as large, as well-resourced and as determined as China. Obviously there has to be a form of fight back, and this is part of it today. But can they ever really win the information war when we're a country of, yes, a G7 nation, but nonetheless a country of about 70 million people, and they're a nation of 1 billion and have more resources and more determination, presumably, to get to build these pictures even from low-level information, Jaya?
Yeah, I mean, look, you've said it yourself in terms of the Chinese state's capabilities, their intent, their assertiveness, their record of malign influence operations, their expansive toolkit. That puts them in a very strong position to be able to carry out such strategies and implement them amongst our population. However, we do have tools at our disposal to be able to deal with this. And one, for example, is the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme. So, you know, we are constantly talking about how China must be placed in this enhanced tier, and that is crucial. China is not in the enhanced tier, only Russia and Iran are.
Why is that? Why is China not in that tier that of those who would do us harm, that are serious enemies of this country? Is that a trade thing? What's the reason for it, do you think?
I think there are a range of factors for it, and you know, I was talking about this earlier within a group of you know, cross-party parliamentary staffers and advisors. And look, essentially, we have here a strategy implemented by the Labour government, which is the 3Cs. So we understand, okay, there is a cooperation angle. We are very unclear on what that challenge angle is, and because we're unclear about that, it's really hard to understand why, you know, okay, we need to challenge China. Placing them in the enhanced tier is a perfect way to do that. We understand the risk that China pose. So, you know, this is something which seems like it is evidently a political decision, but there are those within government, those within the Parliamentary Labour Party, MPs, people across both houses who are, you know, and I say people because I'm not just talking about parliamentarians, I'm talking about people with their teams, with their staff, who are very concerned about the threat that China poses. And that's where I'd move on to the second point, which is these influence operations are happening in every sector that penetrates the UK economy, and as I mentioned earlier, in sectors that are strategic for us. And so MI5 assistance cannot only be provided to parliamentarians, it must be provided more broadly, and generally build up our understanding of how the Chinese state operate, why they operate in the way that they do, and what they will do in order to achieve their goal.
And presumably, just briefly, your view would be a super embassy would do nothing but to enhance this, to help them with this espionage.
Absolutely. Look, we are very concerned with the proposition of the Royal Mint Court site being used to create this mega embassy, which would be the largest Chinese embassy in Europe. And we're concerned about that for a number of reasons, as you've mentioned here. But really what I would say is we have a series of patterns of behavior that we can identify when it comes to the Chinese state. And understanding where we're willing to engage in those relationships, because, you know, no one here is saying not to engage with China. We have MPs network who understand the importance of engagement, but what are we willing to trade off, and where do we see that we are able to stand by our red line?
Important questions, Jaya, and thank you for your time today. Jaya Pathak there, I find that absolutely fascinating. Jaya works on external relations at the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China.